Every now and again, you meet this person whose design aesthetic and design philosophy just rocks your world. And that's what happened during this interview with my new design friend, Edith-Anne Duncan. Welcome to Decorate Like a Design Boss, a podcast for design lovers who want to create beautiful spaces in their very own homes. My name is Kimberly Grigg, and I'm a professional interior designer who teaches design lovers like yourselves how to decorate. And when I say decorate, I mean decorate like a design boss. If you're ready to create a space that your family loves and your neighbors can't stop raving about, well, buckle up, honey, because it's time to design. All right. Well, hello, my new friend, Edith-Anne Duncan. Welcome.
Hi, Kimberly.
So I got to kind of set this up. I want to tell you how I actually first discovered you, and I want our listeners to hear this because it was kind of important. So when I scroll Instagram and any social media, I'm often looking for different things, I suppose. Of course, I'm looking for a beautiful photo or a beautiful reel or whatever. But when I first discovered you, you were showing something on your feed about your design studio and how you had all of your fabrics organized. And I was enchanted because as a fellow designer, I know how hard it is to keep up with all those things. And you DM'd me back right away, and we began kind of this little thing. And I started really noticing your work, and someone, you don't know this part, but someone came to me that works for me a little bit later and said, "Hey, have you followed Edith-Anne Duncan on Instagram?" And I said, "Actually, I do recently." And they said, "Well, she uses color a lot like you do. I think you would love her stuff." And I said, "You're right, I do." So there began my love affair with you and your work. And I just wanted my listener to experience you and know about you because I really do have an admiration for what you do. And I guess I'll just pop off with the first question.
Yes.
And it will be something like this, Edith-Anne, like you're very decorated and celebrated yourself as a designer. And to me, you're known for certain things, but I really do want to hear from you. How would you describe your work?
I would say that I'm sophisticated casual,
Okay.
so function, and then color. So I'm a lot about the function of the space and not just the form and aesthetics. So I go through a very in-depth interview process of how the home or space is used and the lifestyle of the client, and then really hone in on that and their lifestyle. And then I go from there. But I would say sophisticated casual with traditional elements and lots of color.
Yes. And, something that I also notice, and just because I work in color in a very similar way and even a similar approach, for me, function is everything.
Yes.
And I don't know that in the very beginning of my career, function was important, but now it's question number one. What is this room for? How will it be used? Even if it's multifunctional, like how will it be used? But I know where people often get in trouble, and I've gotten in trouble myself, is a lot of color can sometimes end up feeling flighty and a little too whimsical and a little too colorful. So how do you keep that from happening?
So what I like to do is literally stick to only 3 colors. So let's say in the entry or foyer, I start with blue and green, and then the accent is that green. So in the next room, then I would use the accent color as the green. So whatever's an accent in one room then translates to primary in the next room. And then also say if you want to stick to just blues or just greens, then I stay typically on the same paint fan deck, and I up and down that fan deck if someone is a little too apprehensive about using more than 2 or 3 colors. So just my primary and secondary and or accent, that's how I move from space to space. So you're not in one room that's blue and white, and the next room is pink and green, and then the next one is purple and yellow. Those don't flow together. So again, I like the transition from one space to the next and to the next.
So are we twins?
I think we are. Yeah. And I loved your recent project too, that you had of the his and her home office.
Yes.
And using a space, because that's another thing. Whenever I'm interviewed by clients, lots of the rooms they don't even use. So I say, what do you need? What are you lacking? And it's amazing how when you dedicate those things to different rooms in the home, they use it and they enjoy it so much more than just being in the foyer and seeing a pretty room and don't even enjoy it.
Yes. And it lives. Like it has become my pet peeve, these unused rooms, especially the dining room. Oh my gosh. A once a year use of a room is ridiculous. Yes. And I've even tried lately, and I'm sure you have as well. I've tried to make the kitchen breakfast nook a little more unusable so that people will use their dining room or convert it completely and get rid of the dining room. Do something else. Figure out another way to approach the space. So yes, for sure. So Edith-Anne, are you formally trained, self-taught? Tell me a little about your background.
Okay, so I actually think it's a mix of both. So both of my grandmothers and my father both had a flair for this to begin with. Oh. I think it's something you're born with as far as aesthetics, what you grow up around, scale of things. And then I was formally trained undergraduate at High Point University. Mm-hmm. I have actually 3 majors. It's business administration, interior design, and home furnishings marketing, because of course it's the furniture capital of the world. Sure. Then from there, I received my master's in interior design from Virginia Tech. So, but again, I think a lot of people, you don't need the education part. I used to be a big stickler about it because I worked so hard at it. Right. Now I've kind of gotten a little bit more lax on that because I think you're also born with it. Mm-hmm. I think that's a lot of it. So the education part just fine-tuned it even more.
Yeah. And I wonder how you feel about, like, someone told me when I was very young that you could train your eye. And I thought that was a very curious thing to say. And I thought at that time, I mean, I was in my probably early teens. I drew floor plans as a kid. Like I didn't draw things, I drew floor plans.
Me too.
And I couldn't draw things necessarily, but I could really draw geometrics. And so I thought that maybe I wasn't creative or I wasn't talented or that I couldn't be an interior designer because I couldn't draw. Or at that time, I think I even wanted to be a fashion designer. And as it turned out, that person who said that to me, I really should give a big hug to, because I did train my eye. I honed. And I try to tell people that listen to this show and people that are trying to do their own thing that, you can develop a practice. I'm not saying that you can anoint yourself. I'm saying you have to work at it.
Agreed.
But do you feel like, you could develop an ability to do this?
Yes, I do. And it's funny, as a child, I would always play with doll houses and Lincoln logs. Yeah. And that's where I got my ability to literally walk into an empty space and envision what that will look like in the end, spatially, because I worked with 3-dimensional objects to do that. And then I took drafting in high school. I adored that. My mom thought I took the class because there was going to be a cute guy in the class, and that wasn't why I did in drafting. And then I really wanted to be an architect, honestly, but my science and math was not the best. So that's when I went the interior design route. But again, it's something that you acquire and learn. And then the training is just the fine tuning of it.
And you get better and better. Like, when I look back at my work, 20 years ago, I'm like, sometimes I want to cringe. And at the same time, sometimes I look at work 20 years ago and I can see the foundation. I can see how everything eventually developed and what I was drawn to and those kinds of things. I'm sure you felt the same way. So when you hire, do you hire only trained designers that work with you, or do you train them your way?
No, so I train them my way. And I've already seen their skill set and what they're talented at to begin with. Mm-hmm. They're in the door, then I know that it's going to work out as far as that goes. But no, they do not have to have formal training, in my opinion. Again, I've gotten a little bit more lax on that. And a big thing is for me is I've relinquished some control.
I'd like to know how you did that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that is something that every designer struggles with a bit. Like
Yes.
we are control freaks because
Yes.
and most of us are perfectionists,
Yes.
and most of us have that gene that we have to keep in check lest it destroys our life. It certainly doesn't destroy our work. It helps with our work in a lot of ways, but it will take your life and turn it upside down many times.
Yes.
And it is a hard thing to control. So what else about design in general do you find challenging?
I would say too, as far as working with two parties in a household where one person wants one taste and one wants another. And another thing too is be very upfront with both people involved, that I'm working with them as a couple, because sometimes one of the spouses is surprised. So I'm always that's one thing as far as the dynamics and the approach of how we go into the project with a couple. Otherwise, any problems? If it's not a good mix aesthetically, then I just we part ways in the beginning if I know it's not going to work. So again, the whole interview process, but otherwise probably I can't recall any.
So how long have you done this? Have you been doing this long, or short?
25 years.
Okay. So again, we're kind of in similar boats, and, I think that you get better I know I did. I got way better in the last 5 years, even, of making sure that it was a good fit. And I don't know about you, but I say, and I say this to my listener, because if you are ever going to hire a designer, these are some ways I feel that you can be a good client, but you can get the most out of your designer if you are a good fit. And if you're not, realize it from the beginning and don't be offended.
Correct.
And at the same time, I say to clients, look, design is a complicated process. It's just like brain surgery in a way. But here's the deal. Something could go wrong. In fact, it probably will go wrong.
Yes.
So I'm telling you today, I want you to write it in your folder that something will probably go wrong. Now, I've never met a situation in design that I couldn't fix in some way. And we're going to find the best possible solution, and we're going to take care of you. Just know that. You don't have to fuss at me. You don't have to yell. You don't have to scream. You don't have to none of that. You just simply know that I'm going to do everything within my power to put a smile on your face at the end of the day. But will every 100,000 things that go into this be 100% perfect? It won't.
No.
And I think I think that's challenging. But so, on the flip side of that, where does the joy come from for you?
I think if you trust me and let me do my process, that's where my joy comes, because I always do my best work. If you just trust me and I know that your budget and those limitations, and just trust me and let me do my work. And I would say, going back to your question you just had, I think that's my biggest thing. Now I know if you're going to be a good fit. And if you are, just keyword, you've got to trust me. So when you are working with a designer, it has to be a good mix, and you have to trust them, because if you don't, you're going to question them. And then, for instance, it would stifle me. And if you eliminate one or two things, it's very important. You don't think it is, but it is. And that leads to other elements in the room. So you have to trust your designer.
So true. And I have situations all the time, as you do, where you constantly have to remind the client that you really do have this under control, and it's going to be fine. And I think that's part of it. But at the same time, a lot of my listeners are, they don't necessarily want to hire a designer. They want to do this themselves. They want knowledge. They want information. They want the best possible outcome that they can produce. And I champion that, because I think you can hone this craft. I think you can get a lot of what you want and need with the World Wide Web that we have now. I think you have to have practice. And I don't think it ever hurts to have a consult with a professional who works in this business every day.
Yes.
So I do also think there are things that I do in a home that someone could duplicate. Like, what kinds of tips do you give to that person who is trying to go on their own? Because I know you offer a consult service that is not your full-blown design package. And so what kinds of things do you offer to this gal who loves design? She's an enthusiast. She's scrolling Pinterest and Instagram all the time for what will work in her home. What are some easier things that a person like that can do and pull off that gives them some results?
I would say scale is very important when you look at those images. So always pay attention to the scale of those items, the intensity of colors, with the scale. And also pay attention to, when you look at a room, there aren't too many legs in the room. You know, there's a leggy table with a leggy chair. And so pay attention to the contrast of what's skirted and what's leggy. Contrast in the room, lighting, that's the jewelry of the room, in my opinion. So pay attention to the lighting and then the scale of the piece. But again, I think that's where it's worth an investment to really speak to a designer and at least hire them for a little bit of information to get you going, because you're going to make costly mistakes if you don't really pay attention, in my opinion.
Sure. And I don't think it ever hurts. I know sometimes when I'm doing my own work, like things for myself, it's easy for me to get tripped up because the world is my oyster and I'm exposed every day and I can have anything I want. And it's sometimes very hard to narrow that.
It's very difficult.
And I'll say to one of the designers on my team, hey, wait, listen, can you help me out for a second? Because I really, I need to bounce this off of you. I think sometimes that my listener is still a little afraid to reach out to that designer. Maybe they think it's too costly. Maybe they think they lose control. Not sure, probably a combination, probably both from time to time. But I do think that you're right. The value of that, even as a sounding board, I mean, you wouldn't go into surgery without consulting a doctor. And, and this is a profession. It's not just something that we do. It is a profession.
Correct. Yes.
You can certainly attest to that.
Yes, for sure.
With all that goes into it. So I know that you're known for color and your sophisticated color and your sophisticated palettes. Do you ever get the request to do, since all white is trending, do you get that request and do you take it?
No, I have not. And would I take it? Probably not.
Right. You are very.
I know that's not a good fit for me. That's not a good fit. And that would not be fair to them either.
Sure.
So, no, I would say no.
Sure. And when you approach all of this beautiful color with a client that is maybe more of a neutral palette, and you do feel like though they sought you out because they want that color.
Yes.
There is bound to be some pushback because they're not accustomed to it. So what do you say? How do you reassure them?
So again, they have to trust me. For instance, I'm doing a lake project now and they're not as colorful as me, but they love the textures and the large scale of millwork, more architectural. So the way I'm approaching this, for instance, the kitchen, it's very textured. There's a lime wash oak in there, but then I have a really dark forest green with it. So that green is my color. And the plumbing fixtures and lighting is the jewelry of the room. And then there's a couple pieces of artwork. So that's going to be my punch. But again, they know that I appreciate the aesthetics of it, the scale and the form and the function, and they just trust me. So that project's going to be a little bit more pared down than my just loud color. So you'll start a project coming up. Yeah.
That's cool. And I do love, and I've talked a lot to my listeners and followers, et cetera, a lot about this limited palette thing. And I love that. I've said up to 5 colors, but for me, 4 and 5 is almost just a punch. It's not not an accent. An accent's an accent, and a punch might be the smallest pillow, or it might even be a floral. Right. And it's not, or it's a little something in a painting. Yes. But people, I think, gravitate to neutrals because they're not able
Scared.
to do that. They're terrified.
Yeah. They're not confident. Yes.
Correct. And then the other part of this for me about your work in particular, and probably mine as well, and another area I find that people are afraid of is pattern. Like you've got it going on with your color, no doubt, but you equally have it going on with your pattern. So speak to us a little bit about how you incorporate pattern without it doesn't feel busy. It feels lovely.
So for instance, say in the studio that I'm in right now, I started with a large floral, and then I have an accent of green on lampshades and a tablecloth. And then I have the contrast of a geometric linear grid pattern of treillage on my wall. So I like the contrast of a large scale, something that's linear or geometric, and then a small print, and just keep to those three pieces. Mm-hmm. I also like to mix the textures of something that's very scratchy with something that's very soft and something very shiny. Because if you walk into a room and it would feel flat if everything's just all cotton, for instance. So you need a scratchy sisal rug or a scratchy piece of furniture, or maybe it's a crazy mirror that has textured shells or something. Not everything's so flat.
I love that. What a great formula, really and truly.
It's almost like what you wear too. If you think about that, if you say this dress that I have on, it's orange and red and white floral. So the contrast with it, I have velvet slippers that are the darker maroon color. And then I have a shiny, glossy pearl earrings on. So think of it the way you would approach an outfit to a room, if that makes sense. And that's one thing, you and I both are very confident also in what we wear and what we feel comfortable in, because you go out there just like I do as far as prints and color. And that speaks to what we do. So when I interview a client, I say, okay, I want you to show me your 3 favorite outfits that you just feel fantastic in. And when they show me those outfits, that tells me instantly what their house should be.
So true. So true. And I'm so observant of that. Like, I think you and I also have an aesthetic of, I want this house to be you.
Yes.
There's no way.
Yes.
There's no way that I can't impose some of my influence on you, because that would just be impossible. And you did come to me, but I want this house to scream you. Chances are after we're done, we'll be friends, but I probably won't be over at your house every day. And so I want the people that walk in your house not to say Kimberly Grigg was here and she designed it. I want people to say, oh my gosh, your house is you. It screams you. Mm-hmm. And to your point, I agree, like how you dress, what things you do select, how you really do live, not how I live, is all such the foundation of what goes into someone's dwellings, into their aesthetic. It is everything.
Yes.
So I have noticed that you use a lot of Schumacher in your work, Schumacher fabrics, wallpapers, that kind of thing. Just again, not all of our listeners know what Schumacher is, but it is a brand of wallpapers and fabrics and trims, and it's lovely. And so I know you use that. What other go-to items do you use in your designs?
I also love to use Brunswick and Fee because that's colorful, and the scale of it and the longevity, the quality of it. And then I also love statement wallpapers. A better price point for a project that we need to watch our budget a little bit would be Tebow. They have great new, they're very forward as far as their aesthetics and their design. So I do like using them. And they have a great collection of everything mixing together. So for those that like to do it themselves, Tebow is a great resource for that, because they've really put a nice collection together as far as that goes. So I like Tebow, Schumacher, Brunswick and Fee. And then I also like to have, the way I start a room is either by rugs, artwork, or a statement fabric. So I have a jumping off point as far as that goes too.
Same. I find even for the novice designer that is trying to go it on their own, I agree with you about Tebow wholeheartedly. And I often have to hit a price point, and it's something I can rely on. Plus it makes the day easy and still aesthetically gorgeous. I use also a lot of Schumacher, Brunswick. I love those brands as well. But I do find that Tebow does a lot of making it all go together. And
Yes, they do.
just to your point, start with a piece of art or a piece of fabric. A print from one of those companies can be everything you need right there in
Yes.
that print. And you can
Agreed.
really, I mean, you might not know what Edith-Anne and I know about the shiny, the textural, those little things do take a lot of practice, but you can create a color palette. You can create a feeling that you want for a space from a fabric, from
Yes.
a rug, from a
Yes.
piece of art. Those kinds of things are not a joke. They are really fundamental in once you've established your function in your next step.
Yes.
So I say, and I recently said this in a video, like, I know a lot of projects, and this is where a lot of people get really scared when they're doing their own stuff, goes through this ugly duckling phase, like this phase where you're like, even confidently after 25 years, you're wondering, is this,
Yes.
does it happen to you?
It does. It does. It does. So even now, and I think the most difficult client is yourself.
Mhm.
You do know all the options. For instance, I'm doing my daughter's room. She's off to college and it's in that ugly duckling stage. And I know all the options and what's out there. So it's very hard for me to hone it down. So I bounced that off one of my designers here, Holly. Okay, Holly, what's your opinion on this? Because I've looked at it so much and I know all the options that it makes it more difficult. So it is hard for us too. I mean, it's not easy.
Certainly. And I say to the listener, this is when it is a good time to get back up from a design consultation.
Yes.
To know that you're going in the right direction, or to have fresh eyes take a look at it.
Yes.
And again, you and I are privy to being surrounded with other design professionals, and we can reach out and say, hey, Karen, how do you feel about this? What do you think? Like, white is not a color I do well, but Karen does white very well. And so, we bounce off of each other. And when I am charged with an all white setting, which I'm in Myrtle Beach, so I get challenged with this a good bit.
Yes.
I look to Karen for the one perfect out of 155 shades of white.
Yes.
With confidence, because that's not my palette necessarily.
Right.
So I say to the listener, reach out when you get to this phase, because it happens even to the professionals, and it's not comfortable. It really isn't comfortable. And there are times I doubt myself, but that is when my best work and my best ideas come to fruition, because this is when you're problem solving with the best solution in mind. Like, where is this really going to end up? And it just like a painting, it's not always where you started.
Right.
So, and I believe you're an artist as well, aren't you? Didn't I
Agreed.
say that? Yes.
I do.
So, and with being an artist, I mean, I know for me, being an artist is I will often start something and can end up in the most beautiful place, but certainly not where I anticipated.
Right.
But as an artist, you and I both, I think, have looked at the masters, and we've studied the masters, and there's so much to glean from their work, even though sometimes you can look at something that a master did and you think, gosh, that's so simple. But if you think back to, they didn't have the resources and materials that we had, you have to put that in perspective.
Yes. Like Billy Baldwin and Dorothy Draper.
Yes. And that is my question. Like, if we look at the masters in art, like, who are the masters for you in design that you've studied, admired, mimicked? Like, speak to me a little bit about that.
Okay, so I love Billy Baldwin, and then I adore Mark Hampton. Of course, his daughter now is practicing, but I adored him. He was classic. He was not shy in color whatsoever. And then I also loved Dorothy Draper. Of course, she's known for the Greenbrier. Carlton Varney now does that. So those are my go-tos. And then nowadays, I also admire Erin Lauder. Mm-hmm. She's the whole lifestyle of how to approach a room. And Mark Sykes, it's so colorful It's sophisticated casual, so I adore his look. But old school, I would say Billy Baldwin and Mark Hampton and Dorothy Draper.
So again, I knew we were kindred spirits. My favorite, most cherished book in my vast library of interior design books is an old Billy Baldwin. And it, what a great,
Yes.
If I could say to anyone listening, if you really want to study someone, study Billy Baldwin, study Dorothy Draper. Like,
yes.
What pioneers and innovators,
Yes.
and of course, many of the others that you said, but those two in particular, like, have influenced, shaped. I see that it's shaped your work as well.
Yes.
And it is just so interesting. And often in art, when I get stumped, and I do, I'll just like take a break and I'll pick up a Picasso book, or I'll scroll Picasso paintings online, and suddenly that will spark or inspire an idea which totally changes the stumped feeling in a
Yes.
painting, and I can finish.
Yes.
So
And another great reference for me too, for projects, is I often ask clients where are their favorite places to vacation. What was the best hotel that you just absolutely adore? And then I will take elements of what they loved about that hotel and maybe put it into their primary bathroom.
Oh, I love that. What a great
So
idea.
that's a great one too. And travel is a big influence for me as well.
Same. I agree. And I also say to, again, people that are trying to do this on their own, sometimes it's good to take a trip and just let things evolve. Like, don't go with the intention of, I'm going to go look at this hotel and then I'm going to mimic. But let things move you. Let things inspire you. Some people do it by a walk in nature. And sometimes that does get me out of my own head, but that to me is not nearly as inspiring as a hotel lobby.
Yes, agreed.
And sometimes when I travel, drives my husband nuts, but he does acquiesce. I love to just go to a city or a town or wherever we're going, and I want to visit every hotel lobby in that area. And it is super, super fun. And like, I just like to hop in a taxi or Uber or whatever, and just go from place to place. Yes. And I come back with like this whole refreshed inspiration in my head, and it frees me in some odd way that's very hard to articulate. But I think that's probably what travel does for you as well. It does. Inspiration. Yes. It's instant inspiration.
Yes.
So, it's not a necessity for us to live in a beautiful setting. I mean, we can survive, I suppose, without it. But I'm sure that you and I
don't think so.
Like you can't.
I don't think so.
Tell people, why is it so important to live beautifully?
Because even if it's just a simple thing of having a linen napkin with your coffee in the morning, or if it's beautiful flatware when you have your lunch, just simple things make all the difference to me aesthetically when I enjoy every moment as I live in our home. Or when we entertain, the things that you provide for them, the setting, that's just very important to me. But again, say you're fixing your cup of coffee in the morning. I like to use a nice spoon with a nice napkin and a fantastic cup. And then I change that seasonally. So everything that you touch in everyday moments should be beautiful. The containers that hold my vanity products in the bathroom, it's a sterling silver tray, and it holds all of, the cotton swabs and the soap dispenser that I use. Everything that you touch literally should be beautiful, and it cannot be too fine. For instance, my husband uses a decanter, and that's what I put his mouthwash in. You everyday products that you touch should be beautiful, and use things that you wouldn't think to use every day, like a decanter or a beautiful silver pitcher to put your utensils in the kitchen. Use beautiful items and don't just think of them as only doing one function. They can be multifunctional. Does that make sense?
Yes. And I think what you're saying is love yourself enough to do that. It's almost a form of self-care, self-love.
It's just a different form. Yes.
Sure.
Yes.
That's beautiful, Edith-Anne. And I believe it wholeheartedly. And, I preach it. And, I raised 6 kids in my house, and it was it was chaotic, but it was important to me to live in beauty and to teach my children to be surrounded by beauty. And they never broke anything. And I have lots of things.
Same.
They learn to respect it, don't you think?
Yes. And that's the way that I was raised as well. Yes. And it's just it's just a process.
Yeah.
You're strange when you're raising children in a house like that, but then they learn. It's okay. And they live with the beauty. And it's funny because Carlton Barney actually said this at a seminar that I went to a couple of years ago at the Greenbrier. He goes, okay, think about your childhood room. Envision that room right now. And he said, I bet right now you can tell exactly what that is and what that pattern is in color. And that's what you feel most comfortable in. And that's how you design. You know what? He's right. I grew up in a bedroom that had trellis fabric. It was a chintz. It was white with yellow roses. And I had chinoiserie, yellow furniture. And I had a rattan chair in the corner, classic style, full of color. And you know what? That's how I live now. So what your children also grow up in their childhood rooms, in their homes, that influences them so much more than you think. And that really hit home for me when he said that, because that's how I live now. So it's very important for them to see that you are, enjoy that silver, sterling silver, or, it's the whole lifestyle. It's very, very important. And it goes a lot deeper than you think.
Amen.
Yes.
That's so well put, because I say to people who will say, I want to use you. When my kids are 9, why are you teaching your children not to value beauty?
No, agreed. Completely.
So important. And, if you start them, they will learn, and they're able to go to someone else's home and respect those things.
Correct.
We are so aligned.
Yes.
And in our approach to design, our approach to color, so many things that we have in common. I wish you lived closer.
Me too.
But thank goodness we have our little social network going on, because you are so lovely. And we are at that point where I want to pose the question that I like to ask, and I want to do it in a way just like the masters that you and I so appreciate. They've left a legacy. And I feel your work is so important, Edith-Anne. And so speak to me a little bit about what your legacy will be, and maybe even go here years and years from now, when you have that hashtag on a tombstone, what would it say?
Elegant, approachable, kind. And I also want to, let's fast forward. It's kind of the lineage of one of my very first projects that I did. The family grew up there, and now the daughter wants to use me. So it's almost the transition from one stage to the next. So I want that legacy of also being, that they admire what I've done for them as a child, and now they want to use me again as in their own grown-up home. So I would say just kindness and classic.
I love it. I love it. And I sincerely feel that from you. So what a joy for you to share this, and what a joy I just love experiencing you and all the fabulous things that you're doing. I appreciate you coming on. I can't say enough great things about how masterfully you mix, and I know that too will be such an important part of your legacy. I think there is, the one word I don't think we used about your work that I think is important to say is there is a timelessness, and yet you are very current, all at the same time, which is beautiful, which is why someone's daughter would use and choose you, because they don't feel like the work is way back when, even though it's timeless. They feel like it is now, but it has a nod to classicism and historic value. So I champion you. I champion what you're doing. My hat's off to you. I clap, clap, clap. And again, thank you for being here. And I want to let everybody know how they can find you.
Yes, so I'm on Instagram at Edith-Anne Duncan, and then on Facebook as well. And then my website is edith-anneduncan.com. Yes, but you were very kind to have me, Kimberly, and I appreciate it greatly. Really do.
You are so welcome. And thank you.
Yes.
And keep on keeping on, Edith-Anne, and I'll keep
You
on
too.
keeping up with you.
You too.
All right.
You
Take
too.
good care.
Thank
Bye
you.
for now.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Didn't you just love Edith-Anne Duncan? I think one of my favorite things that she said was when she talked about why it's important to live beautifully. And I know that you couldn't see it because I could see the screen and you are probably just listening. But I could see it all over her when I said living beautifully isn't a necessity. And you know what? She believes it is, and I do as well. And when you listen back to this, I just think that the way she put why living beautifully is so important is touching, because it really is, for her and for me, the biggest form of self-love and self-care. I loved it when she said even her husband's mouthwash went into a beautiful decanter. So I know you're going to want to check out Edith-Anne Duncan on all of her channels. You will admire her work as much as I do, I'm sure. So I'll see you next time. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. And what I have to say is don't wait. Today is a great day to decorate. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to Decorate Like a Design Boss. If you want more info on how to decorate your space like a pro, visit KimberlyGriggDesigns.com. See you next week.